I know that we're having some great conversations, and we're about to have an amazing speaker this morning, but I wanted to ask, has anybody enjoyed breakfast this morning? Yes? All right. Thank you so much to our breakfast crew and everybody who volunteers to not only bring in casseroles, but help set up in the morning. I saw both David and Pete early this morning at 6:22 trying to fiddle with the door. By the way, the door lock is going to be replaced today. So just a number of different things that we've got going on here at the community center. Just wanted to mention, we are a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that is trying to do good in the community, for the community, and by the community. We have a number of different programs that run here at the center. Our vast team leader, Michelle Popejoy, runs that for us. It's a volunteer mutual aid and solidarity team. A lot of outstanding programs coming out of the vast team. We also have philosophy nights. We have game nights. Well, that was last night, right? Game night? Yes. We also have things like blood drives, crocheting sleeping mats for homeless individuals. Just so much going on here at the community center. However, we'd like to continue adding to those types of programs. One of the things that Aaron and I were chatting about this morning was doing a humanist hangout, a weekly sit down where we can just get to know each other, have a good time, and just really be in community with and for each other. So we're looking for hosts, people who are willing to keep the community center open for us so that you can hang out, bring it to the community, and continue having a good time. One of the things that we have also chatted about is you may have noticed that food costs have been going up. And as food costs go up, so do our costs, which means that we are looking at the possibility of raising our $5 donation to a $10 donation so that we can we are no longer in the red. We have been operating in the red on breakfast for a number of years now, and it's getting to the point where it's just not sustainable. So we're considering raising our $5 donation to a $10 donation. That would be just barely above our costs. That's how thin of a margin we're looking at right here. We don't like having to do that. However, we have to keep the building open. We have to keep things going. So would everybody be okay with us going from 5 to 10? Okay. So it sounds like we're all in agreement. I'm happy to do that as well. In fact, I will toss in my extra $5 right after this. So a number of different things going on here at the community center. I just want to say thank you all so much for attending this morning. I do see a few new faces in the crowd. If you're here for the very first time, please raise your hand. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. If I could also get my board members, please raise your hands. Yes, board members are awesome. These are the individuals that help, that are on my team that help run the community center. We have a number of different things that we're working on, but we're also working on a new communications team. These are individuals who are going to assist with getting information out on the web, newsletters, that sort of thing. But the other thing that we're working on right now is a fundraising team. As you may have heard over the last month or so, we are looking at, we were able to reduce from about $20,000 to $14,000 budget deficit for this year. We've already had a number of people step in and help fill part of that gap, but we're still asking for a little bit of help here and there if you can. It would help us make sure that we keep the lights on. And also, another thing to consider is, if you can, go to our website, go and donate there. Also, donate to the endowment fund, because that helps us keep us sustained in the future. There's a lot. We're talking about like $5 a month. And if everybody here did that, we could pretty quickly get to that endowment fund. More and more, but we want to bring people in. we'll talk about that Saturday night. Next, upcoming. So we've got some upcoming events, right? Does everybody know what the 12th is of this month? It's Darwin's birthday, February 12th, 1809. Does anybody know whose birthday he shares it with? Yeah, there we go. All right, so we've got half of our trivia already figured out. I love it. So, but because we can't really run those types of events during the week, we have our annual Darwin Day event happening this coming Saturday night. Was it from 5 till everybody leaves? So we're going to party up until like 4 o'clock in the morning. Yay! I love it. So if you can, come join us, have a good time. Where there's going to be prizes, games, trivia, all kinds of cool stuff that's happening here. I might be on the grill duty. I have no idea. So just have a good time. Join us, have a good time, and celebrate one of the most impactful ideas or idea creators the world has seen. One of many, but he's one of our favorites. In fact, we even have a almost life-size cutout of him in the library somewhere. So, anyway, one thing that we did want to mention now that we're here, today we discovered that the front door lock has given up the ghost, for lack of a better term. We're going to be replacing that today, so key holders, keep an eye out on your email to make sure that you get new instructions should there need to be new instructions for accessing the building. We're hoping that that the transition is going to be pretty seamless, but if you need access to the building, let us know. Myself, Aaron, David, I don't see Beth here this morning, but we will get you access to the building should you need it. That being said, we have an outstanding presentation this morning, and I'm very much looking forward to that. So I'm going to hand it over to Aaron to introduce our speaker.
Okay. Very excited for this one. Okay. So we have Andrew Simmons this morning. Andrew's a husband, father of 3, musician, lover of pineapple pizza. I know that's controversial, right? Professionally, he manages the design department of a company supplying engineered building components in Arizona, but we'll be talking about a much different topic this morning, much more interesting. His hobbies include dog training, music production, myself included, philosophy, myself included, as you guys know, and spending most of his time in the studies of ethics and metaphysics, also myself included. So, yeah, would you please give a warm welcome to Andrew Simmons.
Slides moved over.
Sure. All right, thank you, Alex. And thank you, Aaron, for the warm introduction. Thank you for the Society for inviting me to speak today. Ethics and animal agriculture. One thing I have to get off my chest from the beginning is I am a vegan, and as a vegan, I'm legally required to tell you within the first 30 seconds of meeting you, or my head will explode. You guys laugh, but it's actually on the vegan handbook, page number 1. Vegans, well, let's get that guy off the screen. Vegans have a bad reputation as joyless, preachy, holier than thou, protein deficient, pale-skinned weirdos, and it's unfair actually because some of us are tan. Anyway, as mentioned in my introduction, I do like to consider myself a bit of a amateur philosopher. In my own time, that's my hobby of choice, to study and read Ethics is one of my favorite favorite branches of philosophy, but I did happen to notice it has a nasty little tendency of removing all the fun from a lot of things, but all in pursuit of the good life. Today, I was asked to speak on the topic of food ethics broadly. I narrowed it down a bit. I might be taking a bit of fun out of some of your life, but apologies aside, it is in pursuit of a noble cause. Getting on the same page, just defining what we're talking about when we speak about food ethics. It's kind of what it sounds like. It's considering ethical implications of our food production, our diet, and any normative considerations that are entailed by those reflections. It's a large topic, so I'm narrowing my talk today specifically on some motivations to move away from the consumption of animal products, aka veganism, and stay calm. It'll all be okay. I'm used to speaking about veganism in hostile company, so my eyesight has gotten pretty good. I'll see if you are rolling your eyes. But similarly, to get on the same page on what we mean when we say vegan, I'm fairly happy to accept at least as a starting point, the Vegan Society's definition. It's a lifestyle that seeks to minimize, as much as possible and practicable, all forms of exploitation of and cruelty to animals. In simpler terms, we shouldn't unnecessarily cause animal suffering. The nice thing when I talk about veganism is I don't often have to convince anyone of any certain worldview, any normative ethical theory, because I already know that you are the kind of person that agrees that what's going on in our animal farming industry, the kind of abuse, torture, and domination that we assert over animals is wrong. I already know that you think causing unnecessary animal suffering, even to these non-human animals, is a wrong thing. If you don't agree, maybe let me know now, because this could be a shorter talk or take a completely different direction. But generally speaking, I just ask that you live consistently with your values and convictions. In the end, I don't think that everyone will walk out of this room officially converting to a vegan diet. My conversion was pretty swift after becoming aware of some of the facts of the matter, pondering over my own ethical intuitions. I quickly realized I couldn't take myself very seriously as a person, contributing to something that I knew was wrong. However, that kind of like light switch flipping on, that kind of pretty quick conversion, it's not common. I understand that. People tend to think of their entire life up to this point, what they've eaten, how they're used to things, and it can be a daunting task to think about switching. All I ask for now is during your next meal, choose this instead of that. Your vegan lasagna instead of your traditional meat-based lasagna. And we'll take it one step at a time. That's how I typically advise people go about a dietary change. Just think about it one meal at a time. But why should you? I mean, generally people tend to know that what's going on in animal agriculture is bad, but like just kind of generically bad. Why, like what are some specific motivations we have to abolish this practice? One, we'll go over some slaughtering methods common in the US specifically. There was an act established in 1958, I believe. It's the Humane Methods of Slaughter Act. This sets guidelines for, you guessed it, humane methods of slaughtering animals. After looking through some of their approved methods, still going on today, I think you'll agree they are undeserving of the title humane. One would be gas chambers. Animals are fairly consistently led into these big chambers that are filled with gas. Usually it's CO2. The concentration of the air is typically going to be somewhere between 70 and 95% CO2 for the purpose of asphyxiation. And let's be clear, this is not gently putting animals to sleepy time. This is a pretty painful process. The CO2 reacts with water in your body to create carbonic acid, which causes an acidic burning sensation in your lungs, eyes, nasal passages, brainstem, etc. And all of this is happening while the animal is distressed with a sudden urge to, but inability to breathe. This typically is going to be a 10 seconds to up to several minutes process, and then they die. Manual blunt force, aka thumping. This could be a bolt gun, sometimes a hammer to the head. Most commonly, you're going to see this performed on something like a pig that just doesn't meet size requirements for profitability. Sometimes pigs are even grabbed by their hind legs, swung up into the air, and slammed down into a concrete slab. The Veterinary Association for Farm Animal Welfare specifically advises against blunt force thumping, essentially, because they are highly prone to user or operator error and fatigue, meaning they don't kill them the first time, right? There are no laws, however, banning these practices in the US. Maceration, this will be seen a lot in the poultry industry. It's very common for male chicks, as an example. They're essentially worthless to the farming industry, except for a couple males who are kept for breeding purposes. But shortly after hatching, they're put on a conveyor belt, led down to a machine that's specifically designed to crush them, macerate them, while they're still alive and conscious, mind you. Electrical stunning, another common practice, unfortunately also prone to user error. It seems like the main goal of this is to, the electrical shock is to render the animal unconscious, so we can kill them via other methods. Throat slitting is a common one. The problem is, if you've ever been shocked, well, one, it hurts. It's not a great experience to go through. And unfortunately, this practice is prone to imprecision, as I mentioned. Animals, if not precisely executed, they can become paralyzed, but not unconscious. This can, to the technician, look identical. So they'll proceed to cut their throat, bleed them out, while the animal is fully aware, feeling everything in real time, but unable to vocalize or move. That gives us a kind of high-level overview of some of the methods that are in practice today. Not everything that I would deem cruel is through slaughtering, though. Some of the non-deadly cruelty, children, specifically on cows, soon after birth, they're removed from their mothers, physically just taken away. Obviously not for medical care or necessity, but it's because we can't sell the milk that the calf drinks. You can watch videos on YouTube of this happening in real life, and the cows will chase down the farmers trying to retrieve their calf. I do typically try not to anthropomorphize, but when you see the behaviors of the mother cows directly after, and even days after, it's hard not to compare that something similar to what a human mother would experience as far as depression and desperately trying to retrieve their newborn. Animals, famously, they don't have great living conditions. California, back in 2018, passed Proposition 12. This mandated higher living standards for land animal farms specifically, requiring simple things as basic as providing enough space for the animals to physically be able to lay down or turn their bodies around. That met some resistance over the last few years, but I do, if I remember correctly, that is still active in California. They, however, are the outlier. Most states, by a long shot, have nothing even close to that, no such requirements, and are pushing back on Prop 12. So being unable to lie down or physically turn your body 180 degrees is the norm in the animal farming industry. In other words, California tried to set the bar at the pig should be able to turn around, and the rest of the U.S. says, well, let's not get too crazy here. Chickens, egg-laying hens, again, famously, have been artificially bred to produce more and more and more eggs, meaning at this point, they are literally never not having their period. Every day is their time of the month, all so we can eat the byproduct of their menstrual cycle. Pigs, in particular, get the rough end of the stick. They routinely have to have their tails docked off, cut, or their teeth pulled out because they resort to cannibalism, literally going insane from the living conditions that we force them in. And all of that is the best case scenario. Those are the ones that we've approved as a nation, assuming all laws and protocols are followed. However, you can go to the USDA's website and read violation after violation after violation after violation over the last years where these weren't followed. And those are just the ones that have been documented, observed, and processed. I don't want to bash on the US. This is not specifically a problem with our country. This is commonly observed in other countries, sometimes even worse in other developed countries. And don't get me wrong, I don't think this happens because someone just woke up one day and decided, you know what, I'm a sadist now. Like, I just want to impose as much terror and suffering into our non-human animals as I possibly can. This happens because of money. Cutting corners does save time. It saves money. Cutting corners also tends to cause more cruelty. Animal farming is an arduous process. It's not glamorous or easy, and it's definitely not cheap, despite the billions of dollars that our government subsidizes the industry. It's approximately somewhere upwards of $13 billion per year in the US, just for land animal farms. All that to say, the motivations are there to create and sustain a system that will always be cruel. And it is, in my opinion, a unique moral failure as a species on our end that will go away as soon as we speak with our wallets and we stop funneling money into this industry. I will admit, factory farming, which I've focused on so far, it's the worst of the worst. It is. It's the reason I spend most of my time advocating against that specific subsection of the industry. However, similar and sometimes the exact same problems do regularly appear with free-range farms, cage-free farms, small family farms, even backyard farms. As an example, through the artificial selection in hens, some of your backyard hens, typically due to poor being undernourished, they are lacking calcium specifically. And they've gotten bigger, fatter, producing more eggs, losing more nutrients every day. Their bones can break under the weight of just their own body these days. And to compensate for this, if you just let the chicken alone in your backyard, they often resort to eating their eggs, the shell and all, to try to reabsorb some of the nutrition that they've lost. But we take that and we eat it for our morning scramble. I won't spend too much time lingering on shaming anyone trying to run a small farm at their house. For the sake of this discussion, I'll just grant, let's say those practices are fine. I do have my objections, but I'll just grant. Let's say they're fine. Even so, factory farming makes up 99% of all animal products consumed in the US. 99%, no hyperbole, comes from the worst of the worst. So when you go to the store or the restaurant or you order a butcher box online, there seemingly is no escaping where 99% of this meat, dairy, and egg come from. So that's pretty grim by my lights. So how do we get to this point? How do we potentially think of ways to justify it? One thing that was brought up to me early in my experience, or conversion, you could say, someone put the challenge to me to name a trait, something that separates us from non-human animals. Plainly put, I'll ask you the same. What is the trait that a pig, for example, lacks or possesses that if a human lacked or possessed would allow us to treat human beings like we do pigs? Is it because they have different colored skin or they're covered in hair or fur? That doesn't seem morally relevant. Is it because we're stronger, more capable of this kind of domination? That kind of seems like might makes right and not the sort of society that we typically want to advocate for. Is it because we're smarter, more intelligent? But potentially, depending on how you want to measure intelligence, I'm fairly happy to grant that as a species, human beings are more intelligent than our non-human animals. But is that a morally relevant difference between us? I suggest no. And just as a thought experiment, let's say we take a human being and bring their level of intelligence down to that of a pig. Pigs, roughly, they're going to be on the same level as your average dog. But let's say we take a pig, or we take a human being, bring their intelligence down to the level of a pig. Now, do we have justification to treat a human being like we would a pig? Can we bolt them in the head, slit their throat, and then eat their flesh? I think not. Jeremy Bentham put it pretty well back in 1789, saying the question is not, can they reason, nor can they think, but can they suffer? And it is clear that they can. While you are thinking of maybe something that I've overlooked as far as a trait between animals and ourselves, I must press on, and unfortunately, it does get worse. Some additional considerations, more ethical and some non-ethical. There is an inefficiency in our food production at the moment, a lot of waste. You may be surprised to hear that we currently grow enough food to end world hunger. The amount of food that we grow actually could provide enough calories to feed the entire human species 3 times over. But we give the crops to the animals so they can get nice and fat, and then we can eat them and their secretions. Climate change, you'll be interested to hear that the animal agricultural industry contributes more to global warming via greenhouse gases than all transportation industries combined. Planes, trains, automobiles, ships, all of that, animal farming contributes more. Other environmental impacts, 1/2 of the ocean plastic in the Great Pacific Garbage Patch is fishing nets. Half of the plastic is fishing nets. We literally will switch to paper straws to save the fish, but we won't stop killing and eating the fish to save the fish. A bit of irony, I think you'll agree. Other disease and health-related motivations would be, of course, factory farms. They're filthy breeding grounds for zoonotic diseases, just to name one. What I'm particularly concerned about is the rise of superbugs, those resistant to antibiotics. They're quickly outpacing our ability to be able to keep up because of just the sheer amount of exposure they get to the antibiotics we're pumping into farm animals to keep them not, or to prevent them from being sick and dying in the farms. Antibiotics have, to remind you, have not even existed 100 years yet. And we're quickly finding a way to plunge ourselves into a post-antibiotic era. I get that some people are, in some ways, maybe a bit nostalgic about the past, but in a lot of ways, the past was the worst. And I want to impress that we don't want to devolve our world back into a situation where every surgery, every time you cut your finger cooking dinner, every time your child falls off their bike and scrapes their knee, we're looking at a potentially life-threatening situation. And as we prepare that future for our grandchildren or our great-grandchildren, don't have much to say other than, but bacon, though. So, maybe it's feeling a little bit tense. If you're feeling defensive or annoyed, that's normal. I felt the same way right up until the point where I became the person that everyone avoids at food parties. So maybe we can turn it back on the vegan, talk about some common objections that I hear, and these are all probably some things that crossed my mind as I was considering making a dietary conversion. Some even today that I think of, mull over, even still. One would be to say that non-human animal value versus human value. Well, you might say, I just don't think an animal's life is worth as much as a human's life. And fair enough. Like, we are moral agents, and typically non-human animals are not. I do think that if we can generically speak, a human is worth more than an animal. But that's not really the problem that's being put forth. If you want to accurately represent it, I'm saying our taste, pleasure that we get from a 15-minute meal eating a pork chop is not worth the life of a sentient animal. What about crop deaths? Crop production does cause animal deaths, directly and indirectly. So what say you, Mr. Vegan? You're killing animals too. I'll handle this, I guess, a couple different ways. One to say that when defining veganism, I do want to be clear to say that we're trying to minimize the amount of animal suffering and death. Unfortunately, we do live in a world that cannot completely rule that out in everyday practices. But even still, if you remember, I mentioned we're growing more crops than we need to grow just because we're feeding the animals. If everyone were to, starting today, switch to a plant-based diet, we grow less crops. We kill less animals directly and indirectly through crop deaths. To me, that does seem like the vegan choice to make. Tradition and culture is another one that I think I hear during every conversation, and that does tend to be a sticky one. My wife, actually, she's from the Philippines. We're working on her visa right now, but let's just say it's a very different culture from the US. And she has certain traditions, meals, that just bring her back to home, and it means a lot to her. And I can understand that. I understand why this is a very emotionally motivating reason for people to continue with the dishes they've always eaten, etc. Barring the fact that you can make a vegan version of those kinds of things. I do want to say I don't think that would be an overriding, morally relevant reason. And let's take, as an example to illustrate a point, something else that we all agree is wrong. Murder, for example. Let's say, this is not real, this is hypothetical. Let's just say in the Philippines they have a tradition of killing as many young boys as they can on every February 8th. They just go through their town, pull out as many as they can. In the streets, they torture and kill them. And we say, hey guys, that's wrong. You should stop doing that. And they say, well, it's just part of our tradition. We've always done it, right? This is a cultural thing. Would you then decide, okay, fair enough, right? So this wrong thing is actually not made wrong because you've always done it. I suggest that is a no, and we should apply it consistently here if we do think the practices are immoral. Another one would be, eating meat, it's natural. You see lions killing gazelles all the time. You wouldn't morally condemn a lion. Yeah, that's true. One major caveat would be to say that cats are obligate carnivores. They need to eat meat. We do not. Two would be to say, I don't want to base our moral decisions based on the actions of lions. We've never done that, and I don't want to start now. Lions also happen to, let's say the dominant males in the pride, I believe it's called, will sexually force themselves on the females to assert their dominance, and they'll pick fights with the other males to assert their dominance. Should we adopt that behavior as human beings because the lions are acting that way? Surely not. We're not basing our moral standards on the actions of lions or any other behavior that's going out in nature. I think the most honest answer that I get is steak, cheese, the fried chicken, scrambled eggs. It just tastes too good. I don't want to give it up. That is the most honest answer, and I can appreciate that. I think that is the defining characteristic that makes people quite resistant to switching to a vegan diet. So I appreciate the honesty, but at the same time, I have to say it's not a great motivation, much less a justification. Again, I'm going to say I think that the sentient creature's life is just worth more than the sensory experience that you get from a 15-minute meal. And it is just that, just a sensory pleasure experience. Maybe to illustrate why I think that is so crazy, let's substitute any one of our senses for the taste sense. Let's say instead everything in the world is exactly how it is, except for the fact that we are farming animals, treating them this way because we like the way the pigs squeal. We like to hear that sound while they're in the gas chamber. Or we like the way a pig or a cow looks as it's hung upside down and bleeding out from the neck. Imagine someone justifying our processes based on those reasons. You would look at them as if they needed to be institutionalized. And I'm just impressing. The taste experience is just another sense, and I apply it consistently. Those are some that I hear often. I frankly think are not great reasons. After some quick reflection, they can be put to bed pretty quickly. A couple that I think do have a leg to stand on would be consequentialism and the real-world impact. Let's just say veganism it's not widely adopted. In the U.S., kind of fluctuates a bit, but we're looking at about 1.5% to 2%, roughly, of the U.S. is vegan. And the population, I believe, is still climbing at the moment. So with every passing year, my decision to abstain makes less and less impact. In fact, I'm not even sure. I've been vegan for nearly 6 years at this point. I'm not sure if I've saved one animal's life. So if you are someone who is just inherently motivated, purely your normative ethical theory is just based on consequences, that could be an argument you could make. I have independent reasons to think that our moral standards cannot just be based on consequences. I think there is clearly some sort of deontological or the thing about the act itself that makes things wrong. But that could be something you push back to the vegan. It's something I think about every day because it can be discouraging thinking that I've made this sacrifice and I don't know if I've saved any animals, if it will ever make any impact. This has to be a large buy-in before the supply and demand is affected. One more, I guess, name the trait, kind of like I asked everyone else to do before, but let's reverse it back onto the vegan. This is one that I take seriously as well. Is to say, okay, I'm going to modify the crop production issue before. Mr. Vegan, you said that we can allow some crop deaths because it is necessary. And I say, yes, okay, cool. So you can do that to animals. Can we also, bulldoze subdivisions of human beings and poison their land, put them homeless, and indirectly kill them as well? And it sounds like most people are going to say, nope, we cannot do that. And then you can say, all right, Mr. Vegan, what is the trait? What is the difference between a human and a non-human animal that would allow us to make this distinction? I guess the most pithy way that I would answer this would be, I think that human beings possess a right to life that non-human animals don't. On my most pessimistic days, that does kind of just sound like slapping a label on the question, a bit ad hoc. On more optimistic days, which is more often than not, it really does seem like that's a decent answer. It seems like we really do have an obligation to our fellow human beings that we just don't share with animals. All that being said, if my answer does turn out to be trash, I still don't think we're in a position to try to justify the current practices that we're doing, but maybe something to put in your holster if you need to push back on a vegan in the future. Lastly, people, vegans are annoying. They're outspoken and they're aggressive and they try to bully you into conversations you don't want to have. Yes, that has happened. Historically, vegans have made themselves a PR nightmare. And I've contributed to that. I've gotten passionate in conversations where it just wasn't the right time. I've argued with family members and friends, and I get it. Of course, there is this visceral, emotional kind of reaction you may have if someone's just trying to cram something down your throat. And no one wants that, of course. But might I just suggest, if the vegan advocate is correct, they're correct whether they're annoying or they're not annoying. I try to make an honest effort to not be that person cramming down your throat while also speaking about the facts as is, bluntly, making it clear what's going on. And if you can empathize with a vegan for just a little bit, to share my experience, we have a conversation. I'm saying we shouldn't treat animals this way. We shouldn't torture and abuse and display that kind of power over them, remove their autonomy. And people look at me like I'm the crazy one. If you can sympathize with that a little bit, then we're on the right path in my mind, because I think that the problem of animal farming might be one of the biggest moral emergencies in my lifetime, at least. And yep, I get those looks every time I say something like that. People say, what about Gaza? Have you seen Ukraine? You know that racism still goes on in the workplace and sexism, and have you seen what ICE is doing in our own country? I get it. That my statement is in no means meant to diminish any real things that are going on in the world. But let's pick one, racism, going on in the workplace. Go out to your friends, your family, pick out a random person on the street. Ask them what they think about racism. You'll get them agreeing with you, right? You'll get them, you'll hear ideas about how to prevent this, how to stop this. They'll be willing to flock out in support to the streets, to protest, to picket. They'll put in their own money, and at the very least, they're condemning it. They're trying to protect the mistreated. If you go out in the street and ask the average person what we should do to reform animal farming, you'll get shrugs. I don't know. Like, I think generally it's bad, but people are ignorant. They're not willing to hear the relevant details. And once they're informed, generally they just say, I don't know, I don't care. It's just not a priority for me. The animal farming industry, it will always take a back seat. And while it's taking a back seat, since I began speaking, approximately 91.5 million animals have been slaughtered in the animal agricultural industry. It's fish, cows, pigs, turkeys, chickens, you name it, in approximately 40 minutes. I will agree with Peter Singer. He wrote a great book that kind of thrusted my journey into a plant-based diet. He says, we have to speak up on behalf of those who cannot speak for themselves. So I'll start to wrap it up here, just hearkening back to a question or a request that I made towards the beginning of this. During your next meal, during your next grocery trip to the store, when you go out to dinner tonight with your family at your favorite restaurant, vote with your wallet, take it baby steps at a time. All I ask is that you choose this instead of that. Thank you.
So we do have some time for questions, and I will bring the microphone to you. Please ask a question relevant to the topic, and let us move to the next person.
I have a question regarding slaughtering animals that you mentioned. Have you anything in a positive way to say about kosher slaughtering? I believe it's supposed to be more humane. Not that I would go to the trouble of eating kosher food, but that's what I understood. I'm just wondering if you've compared that to what you talked about.
Sure. I guess to give a pithy answer, it's not more humane, so to speak. My problem would even extend past that. Let's say there's no tangible experience that the animal has. We find a way to perfectly just pull them out of existence and they experience no harm directly. I still don't think that we have the right to take a sentient creature's life, even in the most perfect conditions.
Hey, Jason, thank you very much for your talk. It is uncomfortable, you're right. Just a couple of quick things. I have a friend who's Hindu, who's vegan, and I wondered if that's connected to her religion. And also I wondered why you didn't talk more about fish. Pescatarians, it seems like a compromise, but I have the feeling you have some thoughts about that.
Yeah, so firstly, if her vegan diet is related to Hinduism at all, that I'm not sure. I don't know a lot about Hinduism. I do know, just tradition-wise, a lot of dishes in that region, that area, just happen to be vegan, as well as Hindu monks. I think they were the ones that started making seitan, which is like just wheat gluten. That might have been out of necessity. It's just what was available. I'm not sure if that's related to a religion, though. As far as pescatarian being a compromise, I think it's in the right step, for sure. Fish just don't have the same neural connections as a lot of land animal farms do. So there's an argument to be made that they experience less suffering. They're just not as aware and conscious. However, that is just kind of a diminish on quantity and not necessarily making any sort of separation between the qualitative statements that I was making. I still don't think that we would have the right to breed anything with any sort of cognitive awareness into existence just to take its own life later. Fish, yeah, I do have to. I mean, there's a lot I could say. We could spend 45 minutes talking about fish. We could spend 45 minutes just talking about climate change or whatever it is. I'm happy to exchange phone numbers if you want to have it more in the future, though. Sorry.
Thanks. Great talk, and yeah, I know it can sometimes feel uncomfortable, but one thing that you should know, and of course everybody should know, is that we here at the Humanist Society of Greater Phoenix, like, we very much value free thought, right? And being presented with challenging ideas is like something we value, right? Because like we don't want to be an echo chamber. So I definitely thank you for that, right? Can everybody give a round of applause for free thought, right? So with that, my question is on the positive side. So in my professional career, I'm a salesman. You know, I have a couple different sales jobs. And what I think about in terms of potentially helping folks to maybe move toward, you know, our way of life, right? Eating and stuff, is sales and marketing. So my question to you is, what are the things in your perspective and in your world of living and your preferences and stuff, your opinion, that are just amazing, awesome, incredible for being a vegan?
As far as like, what about my vegan lifestyle do I love?
Yeah, the foods you love,
yeah,
the benefits.
sure. As far as like, I'm going to be honest, I don't think that a vegan diet is any healthier than an omnivore diet. I think you can live fully happy lives either way. So I'm not going to pretend like this is some miracle fix to bloating or like any other health reasons. I've always loved beans and legumes. So even before going vegan, I would gravitate towards like a lentil curry or something. I showed pictures of a vegan lasagna, typically that I'm making out of pea protein or lentils too. If you like lentils, then I think that makes the step a little bit easier. But yeah, I mean, essentially everything that I ate before, I just converted to a vegan version, and you'll get in the habit. And I love food just as much as I always have. So hopefully that answers.
Thank you for your talk. Here are some thoughts before I ask my question. These animals are not raised as pets. They are raised to be eaten. If there is a safer way to euthanize these animals for human consumption, that needs to be brought out. And for lifelong vegans, they need to publicize their information so that people know that way of life saved their life, so that other people know that it is a healthier lifestyle. That hasn't been brought out much. Due to irresponsible humans, thousands of dogs and cats are euthanized every year, and no one profits from that, and those are considered pets. So do you have a safer way to euthanize these animals that are raised just for human consumption. They save the farmers, it helps their farm exist, and it helps their lifestyle.
A safer or more humane method of slaughter. I don't spend, I'm going to be honest, I don't spend a lot of time thinking about the best ways. I think shooting the animal in the head is probably going to be the most instantaneous. I would still advocate against that, of course, because I do think just principally it is not allowable for us to breed animals into existence, keep them in the kind of, even best case scenario, living conditions, just to end their life for a 15-minute meal. Hopefully that helps, so.
A couple of comments. You asked, the difference between animals and humans, and I think you answered it later on when you talked about what lions do. There's not a gathering of pigs right now discussing how their actions interact with those of other animals. So I think there is a difference. First of all, I agree with almost everything you said. I'm not trying to be oppositional. I'm just pointing out that there is a moral difference between humans and animals, and I do think that we need to acknowledge that so that we don't wind up in a nihilistic principle that humans and animals are equal in every way, and the world might be better off if humans weren't here. There are organizations that do go to those lengths.
Antinatalist, yeah.
Yeah. So I just want to point that out. Another person asked about Hinduism and veganism. I do know a number of people in the Hindu and Sikh community. Religious principles are vegetarian, not vegan. They do use and include animal products in their diets. They just don't believe in killing animals for food. And then my question for you is, what are the ethical principles and positions with regard to lab-grown meat? We've begun to see in the past decade lab-grown meat that is close enough in flavor, texture to non-lab-grown meat that it's become an option even for people who consider themselves to be gourmands. I'd be interested to know what your feelings are on that.
Yeah, thank you. I know very little about lab-grown meat. From what I do understand, it's just small tissue samples that are just replicated in the lab. That being said, I would probably, barring any new information that might be shared with me, I would eat lab-grown meat. I don't think just principally the act of eating a steak is abhorrent. If it's ethically sourced and grown, then I would be happy with that.
Thank you very much. Great presentation, Mr. Simmons. Let's assume for a moment that there could be found low-cost measures that would, and be able to prove it scientifically, that there are ways to essentially harvest all animal products and eliminate, say, 95% of the suffering involved. However, it was going to increase the price of animal products by just, say, 5%. I would venture to say that most Americans would say, well, I don't want to pay an extra 5%. I'd like your opinion on what figure would you put on the percentage of Americans who would say, I don't want to pay an extra 5%. Thank you very much.
As far as the payoff of reducing suffering versus raising cost, not thought about that one before. I mean, food prices already through the roof as they are. So any increase in what the customer is going to be paying will meet a lot of pushback. Was the question more of what the end user is going to end up rejecting, or like how high would the cost have to be before we see lessened demand?
Actually, I was just asking, what percentage of American people do you think would reject a 5% increase in the price of animal products, even though it might eliminate 95%
Gotcha.
of the horror of animal?
Sure. So the question would be, what percentage of the American population would reject a 5% increase in animal products in exchange for 95% decrease in suffering involved?
Yes, sir.
This is me officially speaking outside of the scope of anything this is speculation. I would say more than half would be unwilling to take that deal.
Hi.
This room might be non-representative of the entire country just because of who you are, but again, speculation.
Yeah, thanks. It's good talk. I have many friends who are vegan, and so I end up going out to eat at many different vegan places. And I have to say, over the past 10 years or so, the quality or the distinguishability between meat and, non-meat foods is narrowed. I can't tell the difference many times. I would like to go more vegan, but both my parents grew up on farms, and I know the horrors of visiting farms and seeing what goes on. It's a lifestyle, but also I've gotten used to the foods, and it's hard to convert completely. But can you enlighten us as far as what are some of the downsides? Because I've heard vitamin B and some of the others, you have to take supplements to counter that. Some things that you have to be aware of if you truly go all vegan.
Sure.
Yeah.
So when I was first making this transition, I was like freaking out. I was counting every calorie and macro nutrition that I was consuming, plan ahead a week in advance. I will caveat this: I'm not a nutritionist, so I would suggest speaking with a doctor if it's a real concern. However, practically, I kind of just figured out that eating enough calories in a day with a well-balanced diet, I have no problem hitting my nutritional needs. There have been some times where I'm busier in life and I'm not eating as well as I should be, and those times I do tend to take iron supplements. Another one is, you mentioned B3 or B12, that just not having the dairy especially, people are quite concerned about. The cows are actually fortified. They have their food fortified with B vitamins. So that's really where it comes from. And a lot of manufacturers are also supplementing.
Is there good proteins, plants that provide proteins? Because that's what I've noticed. Beans. Well,
Yeah. Oh, okay. Hey, perfect. So as far as plant-based foods that provide a good source of protein, beans, that's my favorite. Lentils, I will eat that every day for every meal if I had the option. As well as you have some nuts, pea protein, soy protein isolate, tofu and tempeh are good, as well as, yeah.
Oh yeah, I love all these comments. Getting me, I wanted to kind of dig into all of them, and again, I have questions on top of the questions there. But I appreciate the thoughts there, and just the thoughtfulness of trying to figure out in the system how do we move the system towards more plant-based, more humane ways of living. Really appreciate the last gentleman's thoughts. My question is, going back to a question before, because I've been thinking about this, the subsidization. So we said if we looked at the externalities, if we increase the price of animal products to account for the externalities, i.e. harm, and we stopped inflicting as much harm on animals, would people consume less? Something that I say a lot that I'm curious if you can confirm or not. I eat primarily plant-based, primarily vegan, however you want to say it, and I have this argument often with my roommates or friends where they're like, oh, but this cheese pizza is so good. And I'm like, yeah, I'm paying for a decent amount of that through taxation, through subsidization. We are, as a country, subsidizing heavily animal agriculture, as far as I understand. I'm wondering if you can speak to that. And what would that look like if we stopped subsidizing these industries?
If we stop subsidizing, it's just not profitable. I mean, we talk about people not wanting to take a 5% tax hike. If we took $13 billion out of the industry, it's just not profitable. And it's, as far as if the subsidies will lag behind a major movement within the customer base. If you know anything about milk, that could be, another 45-minute conversation, but the government has, if you remember the Got Milk ads, that was specifically because farmers were overproducing milk. Like no one was drinking it, and they bailed them out, and they started handing out government cheese, if you remember that back in the day. And it's continued on to this day. We're just not drinking the amount of milk that's being produced. And so now all the snacks are being cheese flavored, they're powdering milk, and just trying to find a way to get rid of it. So as far as how the subsidies would go away, that's going to lag behind a major cultural movement. But as far as when they go away, it's just not a profitable industry, large scale.
Hi. I was wondering if you've heard of Veronica the cow.
Veronica the cow, no.
Okay, there was research that came out last month of this cow who lives in Austria who was shown to use tools in a more complex way than has been seen in livestock animals before. And I won't go into the experiment, but it was a somewhat rigorous, multiple trials, like 70 trials with a tool, and to see how the cow would respond. And the significance, according to AI mode in Google, the behavior challenges traditional views on livestock intelligence, proving that cows are more capable of complex cognitive and innovative behaviors than had been ascribed to them before. So I'm wondering if this came out, if everyone would quit eating cows, or if there are other ideas about animals that people might not, maybe the emotional lives of animals that people just aren't aware of, if that would reduce consumption.
I would hope to say yes. From my experience, no. Like I said at the beginning of the talk, I don't expect even 5 people to walk out of this room, just from my experience, saying, yep, he convinced me to change my lifestyle. I can tell you that pigs are just as smart as dogs, and we wouldn't treat our dogs that way. And you'll say, yep, and there just seems to be a cognitive lapse with most people. They'll forget about it or just not feel the emotional, psychological pull, and I don't think that kind of static data point would change much people as far as their behavior, unfortunately.
So I see no hands raised. Actually, Roger's going to follow up here.
Yeah.
A follow-up. I sometimes see ads from, I want to say PETA, other organizations that show some pretty dark scenes, i.e. the reality of factory farming. But if they could put out more emotional things rather than facts about tool use, showing the rich emotional life of farm animals, would that possibly help more than showing negative things?
That would be more impactful by my lights. We are very emotional creatures, and for better or for worse, sometimes we're just convinced more by emotion than by, logical syllogism, let's say. So it's not typically the route that I take when having a conversation. I like to find common ground and then just pull out entailments of what they've already told me. But places like PETA, yes, they're disgusting people and causing that emotional reaction. I do think that for the end goal does tend to be pretty more effective than just hard data points. Yeah.
Again, thank you very much for the presentation. What is the technical difference between vegetarian and vegan? Thank you very much.
Yeah, of course. So vegetarians are essentially they're not eating meat, but they will eat some animal products like cheese or yogurt, milk, eggs, honey. Vegans are strictly no animal products, so we're not eating cheese or milk or eggs or that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Well, Andrew, thank you once again. Can we give a round of applause for this great?
Thank you, guys.
And do you have a few minutes to stay after for questions for those who?
Yeah, of course.
Awesome, awesome. Last thing is, where can people, if people are interested in getting more information, learning about this stuff, or any social media things, where would you recommend they go?
There's a great YouTube channel, very informative, facts-driven, and he discusses things very politely and calmly. Earthling Ed is what he goes by. His full name is Ed Winters. He did write a couple books as well. I can't remember them off the top of my head. But Earthling Ed Winters, great resource just as far as getting informative information. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you again.